888-9570, the Paul George talk feels like it will not go away.
No.
And ramping up, and I don't know if that's because there's smoke or if it's just because it's the next thing on the ledger. It's the first thing that could happen at a very, very high level.
And it's going to happen, I think, to somebody or for somebody. He's going to be moved by somebody. He's not going to sign a max with the Clippers. They've made that very clear, and he's told them he wants a max, and they've told him they don't want to give him a max. And so, Brian Windhorst in that cut that we heard earlier, talking about how there are multiple teams who are willing to give him a max, including the team up north. And if that is the Golden State Warriors, and if they are willing to give him a max, then now we got action, because the Warriors do have pieces. You talked about the Chris Paul contract, Wiggins, Kuminga, Picks, Moody, Looney. You've got pieces that you can offer, and kind of a mix and match thing where maybe the Clippers would be interested in making that happen.
Well, here's where we'll start. I think there's a lot of ways for us to go today. Let's play right there in that sandbox for a little bit, and you too. 888-957-9570. Is the idea of a 4-year max for Paul George even a good idea? Good idea or bad idea for the Golden State Warriors? And that is per commentary from Brian Windhorst, as you mentioned. If you missed it, we played it about just, 20 minutes ago. We'll play it again here for you in just a little bit. But what do you think, first and foremost? Good idea, bad idea? Paul George, 4 more years, max dollars.
It's a bad idea, but I think when you look at what is a good idea for this team, this core, and this situation, there aren't any good ideas. It's not like you're going to get Lauri Markkanen and have him sign a max, and you're not going to be able to trade for him and sign him. That would be a good idea.
Okay.
Younger, healthier, better over the next 4 years. Paul George is a guy who's been hurt, and I was looking yesterday at his litany of injuries, and none of them included the catastrophic injury he sustained in the Olympic run-up so many years ago. But the dude gets hurt. He gets hurt a lot. And he misses a lot of games. But
I remember that video.
It's the worst.
It was terrible. Anyway, go ahead.
It's like Sean Livingston. It's Joe Theismann. And we could talk about all the other injuries we've seen. It's up there on the worst injury, Mount Injury more if you want. But I think about the idea, just in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Paul George, 4-year max at 34 years, 34, 35. It's a bad idea. I don't think that you want to sign a player at that age to that length for that much money. I don't think that that's a good idea.
Paul just turned 34 about a month and a half ago. Paul George is 34 years old.
Right.
So you're talking about if you were to max him out now, you're going to be taking him to early 38th birthday,
right?
Essentially,
and I would guess that the contract that it would be a sign and trade, but the max would negate this next year's contract. It wouldn't be 4 on top of the 1, would it?
I don't think you. Well, no, it would not negate. The contract doesn't negate it. He'd be negating it, basically.
Gotcha.
He's either opting in or opting out. He can do either. I don't know. I think there might be actually some wiggle room there with the team, the acquiring team, as far as whether he's opting in or opting out or whatever. I guess you'd have to opt in and even do a sign and trade, or else he'd be a free agent. So that's kind of the way I read that. But here's kind of one thing I want to throw out there, because you hear a lot, and I've even heard the references made to Jerry West saying once upon a time, never govern your team with fear. And usually what that means, for some reason, we look at governing with fear, we look at that as meaning, like, I don't want to have faith in the young players that are in the organization. I'm going to take sort of the known commodity, even though, on paper it looks like this is a bad idea. He's 34 years old. He's been hurt. We're going to max him out. He's going to go 4 years. That's 2 years past Steph. Like, why would we do all those things? Why can't we apply the word fear in the other direction? What about Paul George and 4 years at the max scares you? What's scary about that? I find very, very little to be scary about that.
Well, I guess what's scary for me is that you have a player who is always injured, or he's injured a lot. Yeah. Always is probably too strong.
It is.
And, it would limit your ability to go out there and get other players if you get next year and you give Paul the max, which would be I don't even know the exact number, but probably 4 years and $220 million. So he's getting $55 million a year. Next year, Steph's making $59. So now you got $114 in those two guys, and Draymond's making $26. So now you got $140 in three players. Can you really build a team around those three? And what we've seen from Boston and what we've seen from other great teams now, you need to have more than just two or three guys. The big three idea is dead. You need a big six.
Okay, but what if I countered with we're completely unaware of what this deal that would go to the Clippers would look like? So I could also argue that while you're saying now your big three, your aging big three, in theory of Steph, Paul George, and Draymond Green, what if Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski and Trace Jackson-Davis are also still on the team?
Okay. So
why can't that be your big six?
It can, but Jonathan Kuminga at that point is going to be getting 35.
Okay.
So now you've got Paul at 52, you got Steph at 59, you got Draymond at 28, and you got Kuminga at 35. There's your cap right there.
What cap?
Put it in the cap.
The Warriors have
you don't
blown
want to be
that
in the second
out.
apron.
No, but there's a
Maybe
way to
for
do
Paul
that.
George you do.
Yeah, well, there's a way to do that also where you're resetting it. I understand that, look, there's the second apron is incredibly punitive, but there's also the resetting process. If they're in, if they're out, listen, my point would be, what if you looked at the Paul George contract rather than 4 years and looked at it as two separate 2-year contracts?
I hear you.
What if you looked at it that way? Does that feel less scary? Because if what you're saying is we want to maximize these last 2 years, it's clearly what the Warriors want to do. Steph's got 2 years. Steve Kerr's got 2 years. I know Draymond's got an extra dangling year after that, but we're maximizing Steph's last 2 years. Now, you get to the end of those 2 years, and what in theory, we don't know what will have been re-signed or anything, but in theory right now, what are we looking at? You're looking at a Kuminga has already been extended. You're looking at Steph coming off the books. You're possibly on the search for a new coach. Draymond's an expiring deal, therefore probably movable. And you'd have 2 remaining years of Paul George at $50-something million, which it's either movable or it's just Paul George. And he's 37, and is he now averaging 18 a game instead of 23 or whatever? That doesn't feel disastrous to me. It doesn't feel like there's no movability there. That's a completely different era of Warrior basketball. If you're just talking Paul for $50-some-odd million for the next 2 years, yeah, why not? There's nothing scary about that to me.
Well, what's scary to me is that he's not the player that he used to be. So you're getting a deteriorating asset in terms of what Paul George has been. This last year, he was pretty healthy heading into a contract year, and the same thing that Draymond Green did when he was heading into his contract year. And so now Paul George played really well last year. He was an all-star.
All-star.
He was healthy. He played great. He averaged 22 a night, and now he's going to get his bag. And does that mean that he's going to go out there and be highly motivated? And you also mentioned Steph Curry coming off the books. I don't know if Steph Curry is coming off the books. His contract will be up. But does he want to stop playing basketball?
I don't know.
Does he want to stop being a Warrior?
But see,
if he wants to stay, his $59 million, it's not going to go down.
Why not? Klay
Because
Thompson's
it's Steph freaking Curry.
So what? But he's
Klay Thompson is not Steph Curry.
No, but Steph Curry in 2 years may not be Steph Curry.
Steph Curry might still be Steph Curry.
Right. So
and
let's
he'll be getting
focus.
$65 million a year.
Very doubtful at that age. But if he is,
you never know.
So what? Maybe he goes into LeBron 1+1 world, and you do that year to year. And again, look what word we just used about 3 times in that conversation. The word was might. We don't know. He might be this. He might be that. He might retire.
Well, you're trying to might Paul George into $220 million, and he might not be as good as he was last year.
My point is
that's
to
what
me,
scares me.
It's not scary, at least for 2 more years. And if you get to 2 years from now, and if it's scary, and if it's a negative, and if Kerr's leaving, and if Curry wants to retire, throw all the ifs into the bucket and figure it out then. Because you will actually have flexibility to take the organization in a completely different direction.
To the lottery.
At that time.
To the lottery.
Well, maybe. If Steph's retiring and Draymond is an expiring contract and Kuminga's a star and Paul George is just aging veteran guy who can give you three-pointers and 17 a night, if that's the case at that time with a cap that, by the way, will be a lot bigger than it is now,
theoretically,
there are things you can do to attack that at that time. There's 2 more years of information, moves, off seasons, drafts, all of these things before it would get scary. So at this, again, just an idea, I'm focused on not the 4-year max for Paul. I'm focused, what would that mean for the next 2 years? And I would argue that if you are subtracting Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins, and I don't know, a pick, 2 picks, maybe another young piece, and putting Paul George on the team, that's a better team. That's a better team for the next 2 years.
I don't think that the Clippers are going to look at that package, even though they are motivated sellers. We do know that there are many, many other teams, Brian Windhorst, looking to give him a max. I don't know if the Clippers are going to look to help their conference rival with a deal in exchange for Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins. I don't see that as feasible. I don't see this deal happening without Jonathan Kuminga. Well, that's my opinion. I said it yesterday. You asked me for a prediction.
Yep, it's a fine opinion.
My prediction is if you go big fish hunting, sorry, Guru, you go big game hunting, I think that Kuminga's a part of it.
Well, and you can think that, and you might be right. I would respond with this. The Clippers, as mentioned yesterday, have a lot less juice in this than some teams in this situation because, as you even heard Brian Windhorst say, and we should play it again, but Brian said the Clippers are kind of wanting to call Paul George's bluff because Paul can either opt in, opt out, because he can be a free agent soon. He's going to have some say in where he goes because no one's going to acquire him unless they know they can keep him. So the Clippers, I know you're saying, oh, there might be 8 teams that want him. Well, there might be one because Paul might go to the Clippers and be like, them. You work out a deal with them or else you get nothing and I'm a free agent tomorrow. And we're saying, oh, they're going to call his bluff. I don't think he's bluffing. I really don't. I don't think he's bluffing. So the Clippers may be New Orleans with Anthony Davis powerless in this situation.
Could be. We don't know what exactly he wants, and he won't tip his hand as to what he wants. And if that's the case, then maybe the Warriors can make the deal without including Jonathan Kuminga. But if I'm the Clippers and I'm looking at that scenario, and I'm looking at Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins in a pick, that's going to be a no from me, dog. And even if it means that I lose Paul George to free agency, I will call his bluff.
Okay.
Because I don't know if Paul George is going to be willing to do that. Because if he does do that and you call his bluff, he can't come here as a free agent.
No, he can't.
They don't have the money.
No, but someone else probably does.
Right, but that's the point. So if he wants to call his shot, you got to call your shot. And you got to make nice with the Clippers, and you got to work the deal to where you can go where you want to go. Because if you're a free agent and you want the max, the Warriors can't give you the max, my friend.
No, but someone else can.
That's right, but he won't be a Warrior. So if he wants to call his shot and be a Warrior, and if he says, I want to go there, well, then it's incumbent on all parties to make that work.
100%. But I do think there are backup options that are stronger for Paul than there are for the Clippers. So here's the idea, basically. Let's say Paul does want to be a Warrior, and he says, hey, Clips, you're dealing only with them. And the Clippers are like, no, we're calling your bluff. And maybe Paul knows in his hip pocket, yeah, he doesn't want to play for New York or Orlando or Philly. Sure. But he's like, but I got the max offer on the table from one of those teams. And I don't hate the idea. Like, yeah, if I had to, I'll go play there. That's a better backup option than what the Clippers' backup option is. If the Clippers
Which is nothing.
Nothing. You call the bluff and you're wrong, you get bubkiss.
Right.
You get nothing.
As opposed to getting a 39-year-old Chris Paul.
No, you're getting salary flexibility. Right. You're probably going to get a young asset or two, whether it's a pick. Wow. Again, and I know you and I see this a little different, which is fine, but I do think some of these teams that are in the position of potentially trading a star, they're not in the position to squeeze what I feel you think they are out of some other teams. They're in a position where they have to trade a star. financial flexibility means a lot to these teams. This Chris Paul contract is power.
But not if you're the Clippers and you fancy yourselves in a championship window, and they do. And Steve Ballmer is like Joe Lacob. He's not going to just take Chris Paul to dismiss Chris Paul to save $30 million. This guy's a billionaire. They don't think that way.
Right, but
he's not thinking about salary relief.
But that's all you
without getting a player to come back and help you.
That's your only way to get someone to help you. Literally the only way to get someone to help you is to acquiesce to Paul George and trade him where he wants to go, because if not, he leaves, you don't get better at all. So even if you've got to take the Chris Paul thing and a Wiggins or whatever, but I can get a pick or I can get a Moody or whatever else is going to get thrown in there, doesn't that make you better than nothing?
I guess, but
that's all I'm saying.
I think we should be a little bit cautious about overstating the Moody piece in all this.
Why?
Because I don't know if the league sees Moody. We got to get Moody as a part of that deal.
No, but he's better than nothing.
Jonathan Kuminga.
But it's better than nothing. Piece. Again, your other option is to get nothing. They're playing poker right now.
Right.
Clippers and Paul. Paul's got the better hand. He's got the better hand.
Yeah, but Steve Ballmer is not in as much of a desperate spot as you think that he is.
I don't know what spot he's in. I don't think anybody's desperate. They're all fine. They're all going to wake up tomorrow with a lot of money, but he's not in a position of winning right now. And losing Paul George, they were short this year. They will be shorter if they lose Paul George and get nothing, don't you think?
Well, the problem with them being short is the guy that they decided to sign and keep, and that's Kawhi Leonard. That's why they're short.
Well, that's a them problem.
Yes, it is.
That's a them problem.
Yes, it is.
All right.